Hi, it's Hope and welcome to the video. This is going to be my January wrap-up and stats. So first I'll start off with my stats, but I will say the stats and then go on to the second half of the books that I've read in January as I did a mid-month wrap-up, which I will leave linked in the iCard. I always forget which side it is, as well as the description. So in January, I will also pop up a little graphic of this. I read 22 books, which totaled to 7,364 pages, and my average star rating was a 4. For the format, I read 16 ebooks and 6 physical books. For the audience age ranges, I read 7 adults, 5 new adult, and 10 YA. And then onto the genres, I read 1 contemporary, 1 erotic, 10 fantasy, 1 paranormal, and 9 romances. So definitely a full of fantasy and romance month, which I am perfectly okay with. And then now on to the books. So the first 2 books I will be talking about, because they are, well, it's a duology, is Ruthless Crown and Ruthless Queen by Amanda Ritchardson. This is a duology, as I've already said, where essentially it is a new adult reverse harem, where essentially we have Briar, who has to move to this new city with her mom to move in with her new stepfather and stepbrother, and essentially, and there she ends up, it's a reverse harem with, I hate to admit it, her stepbrother and then her stepbrother's 3 best friends. And yeah, that's kind of the basic of it. I gave Ruthless Crown 3.5 stars and Ruthless Queen 4 stars. I really enjoyed both of them. I'm really happy I read them. They were fun and easy reads, and yeah. So the next book that I read was Electric Idol by Katee Robert. And this is the second book in the Dark Olympus series. The first book is Neon Gods, but each of them are kind of like a standalone. So the essentially the brief premise is it's an Eros and Psyche retelling where Eros and Psyche end up getting spotted at a party together for no reason really, and the media puts them in the spotlight because of well, they are fairly important people in this city, and then Eros' mother Aphrodite sends Eros to kill Psyche, and then they end up forming a marriage agreement and getting married. And it's smutty, it's dark, and yeah, I gave this a 4 star. I really liked it. I think I enjoyed Neon Gods a little bit better. That's, I think, mainly because that is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I know more about the myth of Hades and Persephone and all of that, but I did really, really enjoy Electric Idol, and I'm very, very, very excited for the future books in this series. The next book I read was Caraval by C.F.E. Garber, and I gave this 5 stars. This, essentially, we have these 2 sisters who end up traveling to this place called Caraval, and Caraval is this big epic performance. And the 2 sisters end up getting separated, and the older sister, Scarlet, has to try to find her younger sister, Tella, as a part of this epic performance / game. And that's pretty much all I'm going to explain. This was a 5 star. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the world. I enjoyed the characters. I'm actually currently, I just started book 2 today. If that doesn't tell you how much I like it, I don't know what does, because I normally wait a couple of months in between books, reading books in a series. To be fair, this also was a buddy read, so that probably did heighten my experience of being able to see what other people are thinking and all of that. But yeah. The next book was Prince's Gambit by, I already forgot the author, C.S. Pacat, and this was a 3 star. Essentially, this is the sequel to Captive Prince, where in Captive Prince we have Prince Damien, who ends up essentially almost exiled from his kingdom as his bastard brother takes the throne, and Damien essentially gets kind of almost sold as a slave to this other country where Prince Laurent is from, and Damien essentially kind of becomes Prince Laurent's slave. And there's a lot of political aspects because these 2 countries are kind of warring, and all of that. And this was it was a 3 star, but it was I enjoyed it a lot 3 star, but I couldn't tell you anything that happened. in a good way. Like, I knew going into this that I would give it a 3-star, but I kind of just wanted like a mediocre read. And this fits it, and there's one more book in this series that I'm hoping to read within the next few months to finish this series off. The next book is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, and this I gave a 4.5, which means that I lowered it from a 5-star to a 4.5 upon a reread, because this was a reread for me. Essentially, if you do not know what Throne of Glass is about, we follow Celaena Sardothien as she has been imprisoned in the Endover Mines for the last year, and when there is going to be this competition to become the king's assassin, Prince Dorian ends up sponsoring Celaena to be, like, to participate in this competition, and like the thing is, if she wins, she becomes the king's assassin, as well as she ends up with a 5-year contract where after 5 years she is set free and will no longer be imprisoned, and she takes this deal. And yeah, that is the very brief gist of this book. Obviously, as we go on into later books, it's a lot different, because this is the first in a 8-book series. Well, 7, and then like a novella that is literally the same length as this book, so 8 books. And this is a reread for me. I'm doing a reread with a bunch of people on like Instagram, and we're buddy reading 1 book a month. And I really enjoyed this. This I read originally in January of 2020, and it was good to be back in this world with these characters. I literally cried when I saw the map. Like, I cried at a goddamn map because I was so excited to be back in this world that I cried. Like, that's how much I love this. So yeah. The next book is Blade of Ash by C.F.E. Black, and this I DNF'd around, I think, 42 or 43%, can't remember exactly. But this is a YA fantasy where essentially we have Red, who has just become king after his father's death, and he has to essentially bond with the royal sorcerer to kind of gain protection. And this royal sorcerer is actually a sorceress named Allie, and Allie is kind of responsible for the king's death because she didn't remove a curse from the king that she could have, and Red blames her for this. And when Red himself gets cursed, it's Red and Allie having to figure out how to get rid of this curse. And I just, like, this book was just okay, and I DNF'd it because it was just okay. Like, the characters were good, and their dynamic was good, but not enough to latch me. Also, the world building felt a little poorly, of like, I knew nothing of the world, even as they were explaining it to me. I was like, where? What's going on? Like, how? So I ended up DNFing it. This was an arc, and I hate when I DNF arcs, but I knew if I would have pushed through this, I just wouldn't have wanted to read anything else. And so yeah. The next book I read was Unholy Terrors by C.M. Stunich, and this is the sequel to Fuckboy Psychos, and in that we follow Scarlet Force, who essentially, she's kind of like the like queen bitch of Prescott High and the local racetrack, and essentially it's literally just a dark reverse harem. There's murder, there's violence, there's drugs, there's all of that going on, and I literally cannot describe anything else of this book. There's Scarlet and her 4 boys. That's literally how she kind of describes it, of like her, as she calls her 4 fuck boys. And it's just a dark reverse harem. It was exactly what I wanted. I ended up giving Unholy Terrors 4 stars. I really enjoyed the characters. I will say that, like, the plot was a little bit lacking, but everything else kind of made up for it, like the character interactions and the character development and like all of that really made up for that lack of plot, because I genuinely love these characters so much in all of their twisted and fucked up mannerisms, and their like I love how fucked up they are. That's honestly like the main thing about this book, is I loved how fucked up the characters are. The next book I read was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa. Essentially, we have Laia, who is Laia is a slave, Elias is a soldier. Neither of them are free, and essentially Laia is a kind of like slave to the Empire, as the scholars have kind of been like hated upon, and she's a part of the scholar group. And Elias is a soldier at this academy called Blackcliff Academy, where these people called Maas are trained, and Maas are kind of think like, I guess what you'd call like the police kind of, but a lot more brutal. And when Laya's brother ends up getting imprisoned, Laya asks the rebellion for help because she believes that her brother is linked to the rebellion, and the rebellion offer to help her in exchange for her entering Blackcliff Academy to gain information, and she ends up being a slave to the essentially like the leader of the academy. And this is it's like a political fantasy with very little fantasy elements. This I gave 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. And like I just like I loved it because I love how, this isn't a spoiler, Elias doesn't like being at the academy. He would rather run off and kind of like essentially almost be a fugitive than become a Maas. And I just love their interactions between Laya and Elias. I also love just how nitty gritty and dark this is. It's pretty dark for a YA, especially when you think of the fact that within the first like 50 pages there was already 2 characters dead and a character that died of whipping, like died of being whipped to death. So it's very dark, and I am very, very excited to continue on with book 2, which is A Torch Against the Night. I'm fingers crossed I can read it in March, because there's no way I'm fitting it on my February TBR. That is literally already so huge, and I've already added like 2 books on it from the original 19 that I had to read, so wish me luck on that. And the final book is Brothersong by T.J. Klune, which is the 4th and final book in the Green Creek series. This I gave 5 stars. I love this series to death. It is like probably in my top 10 series of all time. I genuinely just love it so much. Essentially, I'm not going to really describe Brothersong because it's the 4th book, and then also I hate describing this series because of just like how hard it is to describe. Essentially in the Green Creek series we follow werewolves. We follow the Bennett pack, which are a pack of werewolves, and it's just stuff happening to them. And this 4th and final book is the character of Carter's point of view, which I was so excited to read and I loved. I cannot tell if the 4th book or the 1st book is my favorite. I feel like one of those is my favorite. And I will say that Brothersong is my favorite book that I read in January. And I love that I finished it on the last day of the month. Like, it was the last read that I read, and it was my favorite. So I saved the best for last, and I love that. I'm sad that this series is over because this was a series I was buddy reading with a bunch of people on Instagram. Actually, a lot of the same people that I'm buddy reading Throne of Glass with. And I'm just like so sad that it's over, but I know that we're doing a buddy read of a different TJ Klune series later this year, so I'm very, very excited for that. I cannot remember which series it is. But yeah, those are what I read in January. I'm just going to double check that I didn't forget anything. Yeah, no, I didn't forget anything. I feel like I forgot something, but I didn't. But those are the books that I read in January. In the second half, again, I will leave the mid-month wrap-up in the iCard and the description. Let me know what you read in January, what your favorite book in January was, if you've heard of any of these, or if you've read any of these. I'd love to just hear any of that in the comments below. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and bye!